Hello and welcome back to the course on Python programming. In the previous tutorial we created this lovely dashboard that contains 4 charts which we had generated previously. And as you can see, it's very simple to create dashboards in Python. You just use the subplots function to create the layout, and then you populate the layout with the charts that you're after. Now today we've got a very exciting topic ahead of us. We're talking about styling the dashboard and styling these charts within the dashboard. I'm really looking forward to it. Right now it already looks very good, but as you'll see, we can make it look extremely fantastic and extremely captivating. And that is a very important part in data science, to not only convey the findings, but also to make the report look interesting and appealing so that people will want to read it, that they'll be engaged in reading it. All right, so let's get to it without any further ado. So I'm going to zoom in to 200%, and now I'm just going to basically copy everything we have. So again, I'll copy the imports because in case you're jumping into this tutorial, you will need to run the imports if you haven't yet. So I'm going to first change this to a markup, add a line, and here we're going to say styling dashboards. And now let's just copy the imports. There we go. And now what we're going to do is just copy this whole dashboard code, because we're going to be building upon it, on top of it. So I'm going to run that so that the dashboard appears here again. Let's give it a second. There it is. And now we're going to start styling. All right, so how can we style our dashboard? Well, let's start with one of these plots to begin with. We'll start with, well, this one, we've already started styling it actually. So you can see that we've added some color. So we've got a color map. CMap stands for color map. We've added the outline, and it already looks good. So let's do the same for these other 2 KDE plots. And just to make it different and to kind of like experiment with other types of color maps, we're going to use a different color map for these 2 plots. And because also these 2 plots, they represent something else. This plot is audience rating versus critic rating. These 2 plots are audience versus budget and critic versus budget. So it will be useful for us to use a different color map for these 2 plots so that the reader can right away visually assess that these 2 are different to that. All right, so let's get started. Here we're going to do something similar to the plot number 4. So first of all, I'm going to remove this tip comment, and let's group them like this. So this is plot 1, plot, well, let's say plot 0, 0. This is a lot. What is this? 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, just so that we know where we are while we're navigating. And finally, plot 1, 1. All right, so we're going to start with plot 0, 0, the one on the top left. And here we want to add the same kind of parameters. So we're going to say comma, we already have the comma. We're going to say shade equals true, shade lowest equals true, and then CMap. So here we're going to choose a different map, and let's start with a simple one. We've already used reds. Let's start with blues. Let's see how that looks. So if I run that, I need a comma. Of course, I need a comma, the backslash. So if I run that, give it a second. There we go. So that looks quite nice already. And you can also, another good idea is to add an outline again, because it is quite rough over here along the edges. Going to add an outline. We'll say K1B. Doesn't really matter what name you give it. So here we don't do any shading. We just add the outline like that, and we'll just bring the axes back here. So if I run this will give us a nice outline and make it look contoured. So there you go. That looks much better already, right? So, and then we could do the same thing for this plot over here. Now, what I wanted to show you is that what kind of color maps exist, what kind of color maps can you use in Seaborn? Well, for starters, where do you find the color maps? Personally, I think the best way, the easiest way is if you make a mistake in your code, for instance, you say blues or double S or something like that. If you run that, then it'll bring up an error, and it'll actually tell you value error color map blues is not recognized, possible values are, and then it just lists the possible values for you right here. So you can go ahead and just copy these into a text editor or something, and you can experiment with any color maps from here. You can combine them, so you can use one color map for the fill, another color map for the contour, and it can give you some great results. So depending on who you're presenting to, what kind of organization it is, what kind of report it is, what the report is about, you might find different color maps are more suitable to different situations. So in this case, I'm just going to use something that I found that looks really appealing for our situation. And then you should feel free to experiment and try out different ones. So the color I'm going to use for the fill is Inferno, and the outline is going to be very contrasting, is going to be Cool. So you can see them here. If you scroll down, you'll find Cool is here and Inferno is here as well. And also when you say, if you want to reverse the color map, you just you put an underscore and then an R, and that will reverse the order in which the colors come. So if I run this now, you'll see what it looks like. So there you can see that we've got the Inferno color scheme. So it goes from yellow and then so like very hot in the middle and then dies off. And then we've got the contrasting Cool outline and makes it look like neonish type of, makes a neonish chart, and it also draws a lot of attention to it. So in the middle, you can't really see the outline. You can, but at the same time, it kind of matches the fill. But then towards the edges, the outline is very contouring and gives this kind of futuristic look. And I personally really like this type of chart, and it works well in our dashboard. As you'll see, as we style the rest of the charts, it will be a good fit. All right, so that's our first chart. Second chart, as we discussed, we're going to keep it in the same styling because we want our users to visually understand right away that these charts are related, that they're talking about the same thing. So it's easy for them to understand that without having to look at the axes or try read the chart in advance. So it's basically right away an obvious thing. So here we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to copy that, and we're going to replace that here, and we'll just say 0, 1. So there you go. That's our critic rating. Let's have a look at that. Of course, somewhere I forgot something. Let's have a look. What did I forget? All right, so let's change this to be here, and let's try run that again. There's just some spaces after the line continuation character or some tabs, so just make sure that doesn't happen. Otherwise, just kind of what you can do is always just delete and then press enter. That will fix it. All right, so there we go. Now you can see that these two charts look very, very slick. They look, I think they look fantastic personally. Now we got to work on these remaining charts. So what are we going to do here? Well, for these charts, one thing that we can add or we can change is definitely the background. So as you can see, the background here is black, and that is an effect that black is part of the color scheme for Inferno. So it's the last color. And here we're saying shade low is true. So if we don't say shade low is true, then the black won't be here and it'll be just the same background as these two. But it actually looks pretty good. So let's try get these backgrounds black as well. How do we do that? Well, we need to look at our set style, which is at the top. We've got dark grid, but how do we make it black? Because we know that the only options available here, there are not many options. They're actually just white, white grid, dark grid. These are preset styles and ticks. So how do we actually make it just black? Well, we can pass a keyword parameter or a keyword argument. So we're going to create a dictionary here, and the keyword argument that we're after is called axes.faceColor, American spelling of color, and then we'll say black. So it's kind of the background of your chart. And that's a way to circumvent the predefined style. So the star grid is not just black, it's got a blue, kind of bluish background. Here we're saying we want the background to be black. Let's have a look. There you go. So now it's black, but it still has this grid. So what we want to do is we want to change it from dark grid to dark, or you can just put in white, it doesn't matter. The result will be the same. So basically, the style will say we want just a bluish background like we had previously on these plots, or a grayish background without a grid, and then this keyword argument is going to override the grayish color with black. So let's have a look at that. All right, so now you can see there's no grid and these charts are starting to look great. What else would we change about these charts? Well, first thing that you can see is that this chart now doesn't look as good on the black background because the white, it's dark in the middle, then it goes out to white and it really contrasts the black. So it just looks like it was to me it looks like a blurb that was just dropped onto this black background. It doesn't look as great as it used to. So how can we fix that up? Well, one of the ways we can fix that up is to change the color, and also might be a good idea to change the color to make it even more so different to these charts. So let's try something else. a color scheme that I found for this plot is, let's go up here, and here we're going to say for this plot, what I found works pretty well, surprisingly well, because it is different to the other plots. We'll say blues here, and for the contour, instead of reds, we're going to say gist underscore gray underscore R. So that's the reversed gist gray color scheme. Let's have a look at that. So there you go. Now you can see that this looks pretty neat. So the reversed gray actually works very well. So you can see the white is on the outline instead of being on the inside, and therefore it would blend in with the filling. Now we've reversed it, and the gray or the contour is very contrasting to the fill, and then it still stays contrasting as you go out towards the edges. And personally, I find that this chart looks quite mesmerizing. It looks like it's actually three-dimensional when you look at the waves over here. So that is our fourth chart, how we styled it. And as you can see, the style of the violin plots isn't really changing because we haven't changed the color scheme here. So let's get to our violin plots and change them up a little bit. So by the way, these are violin plots for just critic rating. It is kind of a bit unfair towards the audience rating. So we've got audience rating here, and we've got budget millions here. So maybe we'll want to change these as well to something else. For instance, we could do a violin plot of budget millions. So maybe let's go ahead and do that. We'll change it over here. So we'll say, where's our violin plot? There is our violin plot. So we don't want just drama for movies. It's just the drama data set. We want data movies, and X equals, what do we want X to be? I think we want X to be, we could do genre or we could do year. So if we have here, instead of critic rating, we say budget millions. So let's keep it at year for now. So if I run this, that's our original violin plot in the unedited chart. So there, that's what it looks like. And now in the styled chart, we're going to replace it here as well. And while we're at it, how do we add some color to our violin plots? How do we specify the color scheme that we want to use for the violin plot? So let's see how we can do that. Well, for the violin plots, the parameter that we want to use is, let's go back here. The parameter that we want to use is called palette. Palette equals, and here we want to say, we want to choose a palette. Once again, it's the same as a color map. You could use Inferno, you could use Cool. For example, let's try Cool. Let's see what that looks like. So if you use Cool, give it a second to load. All right, so here you can see Cool. Personally, I don't think this is the best one. It doesn't look the best towards the purplish colors. So towards the higher frequencies, we want it to, like, it starts to hurt your eyes or blend in with the black somehow. So we want to change the color. And a good one I found in this case is yellow. So YL, or R for orange, and RD for red. Yellow, orange, red. So let's give that a go and see what our result looks like. There we go. So I find this one looks pretty interesting. So you can see that how the budget in millions has been changing throughout the years. It hasn't been changing that much. So, but at the same time, you can see that the width has been changing. So that's showing you where the concentration of the different movies is, where the different points are. So you can always change it to, very quickly, you can change it to genre, for instance, and have a look at that as well. So it depends on what insights you want to convey, what chart you want to include in your final result. So genre, in this case, it doesn't look as neat because there isn't that much space, but at the same time, you can see how the violin plots change. So for action, adventure, comedy, thriller, and so on. So I'm going to keep it at year, so we don't make too many changes to the original chart or original dashboard. And let's have a look at that. So this is our final. Let's zoom out. There you go. So you can see it is a lovely dashboard. Even though this one is already very interesting, very cool, a bit of styling makes such a huge difference, right? So when you compare this one, which looks kind of like academia type of focused, and it is something that you'd put in a report or even a published paper. It looks okay. It looks good. It conveys the insights. Whereas this really stands out. This is something you'd put in a presentation for a big conference when you're presenting to a couple of hundred people or maybe 1,000 people. You'd present something like this because this is fun. This looks amazing. It wants people to learn more about what you're trying to tell them, and they'll be curious about these charts because they actually stand out. And that's a very important part of data science, to make your presentation so captivating that the audience wants to learn more about what you're about to tell them. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Definitely have a play around with that. There are endless possibilities for you to combine different color schemes and different dashboards, layouts, different charts. It's always good to practice these things because not only will you have fun along the way, but also you will get that hands-on experience. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, happy coding.